Hello everyone, thank you for joining. Welcome to our Driven podcast. Today we're going to be looking at a guide to your cloud journey, specifically around the beginning of the journey and actually the doing. So far we've talked a lot around the theory behind it, the things you need to know before you start, but today we're going to talk around what we're doing. So as those of you who listened before, my name is Steve Old. I lead the cloud specialist team here.
And I'm Ian Dellbridge. I'm one of the senior site reliability engineers working across all cloud platforms.
Yeah, James Hollins, also senior site reliability engineer, working with enterprise customers, helping them move their infrastructure and applications to the cloud.
Great stuff. Thank you both for joining me today. And specifically, I asked for you two on this, not just because you're the most amusing and mischievous people in your team, but because you have worked across all three. You've been in enterprises. You've also done some of the small bits. You've done retail, you've done construction, you've done engineering, you've done all sorts of bits. So I thought, actually, looking at how people start, this would be a really good place to be. What is at the start of a cloud journey? Probably where I wanted to start. So let's think about it. So someone has decided where they're going to go, let's say. An enterprise has been told by the CEO, the CIO, we're moving to cloud. They have done their platform analysis, and then they're going to, if we play some scenarios, they're going to go to a platform. Mm-hmm. What's the first thing you advise them to do?
I guess the very first thing before they even do that is take a step back and understand their workloads. Mm-hmm. Because if you don't understand what you've got, you can't really tell where you're going to go with it. Because different cloud providers have different strengths. So if you don't know exactly what you've got, and you're going to be moving to a specific place, and what the strengths of that place are, then you can't really make that decision. So that's kind of the very first step. In
the hope that they've done that, what next?
I suppose it's different customers will have different priorities. Some of them will be literally, let's get this cloud journey underway, let's get the low-hanging fruit and just get straight on, get some stuff in there. Because it's some of it's driven by perception from the higher levels of senior management.
They need some success stories, right?
Exactly, yeah. And some of it's
some traction.
Yeah, and then underpinning that, the techies will want to kind of do it right. They want to re-engineer. They want to kind of leverage the best out of the cloud.
For me, you've got to have done a bit of groundwork, whether it's a cloud operating model, whether you've decided how you're going to build security posture, whatever that might be. There's got to be that piece first. Mm-hmm. But what people can get stuck in doing is spending all their time on that and never get to the doing. You've got to be a bit more pragmatic, right, and have it as an iterative approach. You've got to have a base layer of a set understanding, but that's always going to be changing. And I guess you see that all the time, right?
Yeah, that is like your tier zero, essentially, is what we're talking about here, is what we've generally done with the engineering company and the construction company that you alluded to.
Absolutely, and I think it's about getting that split into layers. So you've got your kind of workloads, your SQLs, your web servers, you've got your security layers, and they don't have to happen in a certain order necessarily. You can start looking at your workloads and getting those migrated, but at the same time as working on your security layers. Yeah. And as your cloud journey evolves as well, you find that the security changes.
Yeah.
And kind of some of the considerations you had at the beginning have actually changed because you actually got more of an understanding of what's involved. So you can get those layers split out so they can adapt, and you can change them and just layer them on top of each other. And that approach is generally better than just being rigid, saying this is exactly what we're having, we're not going to deviate from this, because we've seen that time and time again. The customers are way too rigid in their stance, and they end up going down a journey that they end up with something that's just not flexible. And the cloud needs to be flexible.
I think we're kind of pulling out some bits that I consider being building blocks. So security, absolutely, is a building block. People and training of people, building block. Your application layer, those pieces, is part of it, right? And understanding where you are. I think security is a really interesting one because security really changes versus how you did it on-prem.
Oh, God,
yeah. And I say that to people all the time, and they kind of take it at face value and go, yeah, I'm sure it does. But I don't think people get why it changes. And in my eyes, it's around kind of the fact that everything's software defined now, that everything can be written and everything's written in rules. But when you're working with customers, is it as big a change as it seems to be when I speak to them at the beginning, where I'm kind of trying to evangelise about this and tell them? When you actually get on the ground, how big a change is it for them? Are they ready for it, or...?
There's reluctance always because it's change, and generally speaking, the guys who are involved with security now, it's a very different world when you're in the cloud. So it's about hand-holding them through that process and showing them actually, although it's different, it's not that complicated. But
if anything, simpler, I think.
Yeah, absolutely. And especially the different cloud providers do things in a slightly different way. So there's a little bit of a mind shift there. But once you get your head around it and understand it and get it right, it's okay. It's very daunting, those first few steps, because there is a lot of understanding to be had. But that's our job, is to handhold them through that process.
We've had customers where you've moved them to the cloud, you've shown them that, let's say they've got a public-facing web service that that we can very easily make publicly available just using the cloud security tooling.
Yeah.
But the networking guys
Want a firewall.
they'll still want a firewall, and they don't understand that what we're giving them is as secure, if not more secure, because you're giving them Google's, AWS's, Microsoft's security layer in front of their infrastructure.
Yeah.
You can't.
You might not see it.
Yeah, you might not see it, but you can't beat that.
It's a really good point, actually, because you can get the people with the skills, but it doesn't give them confidence.
Yeah.
And that's the thing, is the confidence in the products that they're now being introduced to.
They feel it's like abstracted from them, and because it's abstracted from them, it doesn't exist.
Yeah.
They want something tangible. They want to be able to log into a
It's a
firewall,
real change, right? Yeah.
make some firewall rule changes, and whilst it's a bit of self-preservation going on there as well, but what they kind of need to understand is that there's still something there for them. It's just somewhat different.
Yeah. So train your people right, and get it right first time with using those tools that are embedded.
Yeah, and engage them.
Yeah.
Make them part of that journey, rather than to kind of dictate it, because otherwise you get the resistance, and they don't believe in why we're doing things, why there's the change. Then they're always going to be kind of pushing back against it.
There's that common networking piece that always sort of comes up as well, where people start spinning up VPNs, various VPNs all over the place.
It's kind of this horrible mesh of things going all over.
Yeah,
the
it's
place.
kind of someone running off with a credit card and just starting to do things, and that's when you need that sort of central design, that landing zone piece to start.
Having that governance piece in place just to stop that unruly behaviour.
Yeah.
And it is unruly. It's just it creates huge amounts of technical debt.
Yeah. We've got it right now where we've got a customer where they've got, I can't remember how many Azure subscriptions it was.
Over 100.
Over 100 subscriptions that they've now got to pull in under the level of governance that we've given them.
Yeah.
And how
That's
difficult.
much harder to do than put it in right in the first place. I'm working with someone, AWS, and the exact same idea. They basically got their company name.com searched by AWS for them and found something like 238 accounts, of which they knew about 40. And so they've got all these ones. So they might absolutely build this model, which is the right thing to do, but then actually getting things retrospectively to fit in is much, much harder.
On the flip side, there's exactly the same customer that's got the 100 plus subscriptions. We've created an AWS model where they have an account per application, but because we've got all those layers on top, everything's fine. You can look at every account and they'll have exactly the same levels of
And
security.
you've protected yourself from blast radius of any particular account, which is why I think people kind of fear having too many accounts. If you do it right, actually accounts become all the easier. And with the new tools out, the new things like the transit gateway, for instance, it becomes even less of a problem.
Oh, good, yeah.
I think network as a block is absolutely one of them. Again, because it changes in people's minds and perceptions.
I think the traditional network guy, he finds it a bit daunting and probably finds it a bit simplistic when he first looks at these environments as well. It's not as complicated as it used to be, therefore it must be inadequate, but it's not. It does everything it needs to do.
Yeah, for people who aren't networking experts, I think it's a massive help for them because it's software defined and you can write it all in Terraform. It logically makes sense. Much easier than a guy talking to you about VLANs and switches. And
the fear people get around infrastructure as code, if they've never done it before, is massive. And I think just a bit of training early on, a bit of welcoming people to what they do, the fact that you can actually do it on your internal environments and actually add that benefit to wherever you are is something I think most people miss.
Absolutely. Yeah. Terraform brings a great layer of tooling to all of this. It's just
it's changed the world. Yeah, it's changed the
changed
world of
your world,
working.
yeah. I mean, we can switch between different cloud providers with ease without, we have our primary kind of cloud providers that we work on, and we can switch between one another, and the concepts are just there, and it's just easy to build stuff out.
Anyone can come and look at it and understand what's there.
Absolutely, yeah.
And that makes a massive difference. So you have someone leave the risk of technical debt drops significantly in terms of infrastructure because it's all there.
The infrastructure as code becomes the documentation for a lot of builds. So a lot of customers, enterprises, they still want that HLD. They still want the very nice drawing, 15-page document, but it's not really a requirement anymore. It actually slows you down and puts a lot of bureaucracy in the way of actually doing anything.
But you can reverse that and actually get Terraform to give you a map once it's built. You know, if you need to backfill documentation, although I do think to an extent documentation exists because it's in the living code.
Yeah.
But I think this is a big change. IAC and the training around it and the tooling is a massive building.
Mm-hmm. Getting people to understand that to do things by code is way better than just logging on to something and changing it. Is such a difficult transition. And getting the buy-in on that, and there will always be people that resist it. And Azure Policy, fantastic tools for those elements, just to kind of report on those and non-compliant resources.
Google have just released something similar, especially around Kubernetes.
Okay.
Around build config, which I think is similar, that kind of thing. So I've been prepping for my exams. I've got exams with all of them coming up, and config as a thing to read about. It's just like you've not got an excuse anymore. This is so easy. AWS landing zones, it's so easy. These things that have been pulled together to actually, you shouldn't go wrong. They've tried to make it so easy.
What's the next one? It's Control Tower, isn't it?
Control Tower,
it's coming.
That's really cool.
Yeah. You can see they're starting to build around, because I think previously, especially maybe more so Google, weren't and still necessarily aren't ready for the bigger enterprises, whereas someone like AWS and Azure have started building in a lot of other tooling within the cloud providers that enable enterprise customers to...
I think it's a philosophical difference. I think that Google still aim very much at the developer.
Yeah.
And I think that's what it comes down to. I think in practice you end up being right. But Google want you to build it right in the first place.
Yeah.
So then you're not going to have these problems. While I think there's a bit of pragmatism around actually, if you use all these tools we give you, you don't have to worry about doing it right. We'll make sure it's all right.
Yeah. Yeah,
potentially. Yeah.
There's customers who want to keep their backups for 15 years for legal reasons and things like that can be somewhat more difficult across the board, essentially.
People kind of build themselves into a world of fear, don't they, where they've got to do this. And actually, when you often go back and look at the real requirements that they need, it's 7 years, not 15. They've got terabytes and terabytes of data that they don't really need. I mean, I do remember having a customer who... someone found an email that they'd kept an email, but it basically saved the company £200,000 because they'd kept this email and it proved that a customer had agreed to something, and so they're like, we are keeping emails forever, and it's a bit like, well, I can see why you've had proof in your case that it's made you a significant amount of money.
It's funny you should touch on that, because when you put a cost to a service, it skews people's perception of what they want and what they actually need. And we've seen that with RTOs and RPOs, particular applications demanding certain levels.
Yeah. And then when you actually get into it...
when we sort of kind of go, well, actually, it's going to cost you X amount. And they're like, well, it didn't cost that on premise, but it does now.
Yeah.
So, okay, actually, we don't need that. And it just kind of their perception of what they need and what they want and what they need is very, very different.
Yeah, it's way more realistic.
Yeah.
I'm going to bring up next something that I think concerns a lot of people because they don't get it, but hopefully you guys will make it a very simple concept. IAM, Identity and Access Management. What are your tips for starting in cloud with IAM?
Okay.
Feel free to go to all clouds because they're different.
Yeah, I think the general thing which is common for for all of them is just kind of, if you do it on an individual user basis, you're going to end up in a mess.
Yeah.
It's like an AD environment where you're putting individual users on a folder or a server access. Always try and go group-based.
Roles and responsibilities, right?
Yeah. If you can do some sort of federated access to tie in with your AD,
yeah, so Azure AD is fantastic for that.
You can keep that kind of idea, that federated idea.
Yeah, so why have a user here and a user there, and just kind of put them all under one banner. That's for starters, and then you've got to look at the resources, what they are, and then try and start getting the level of security on them. So you're tying them down to the appropriate levels, and doing that through groups is the best way of doing things.
And when you're looking at having all those accounts to reduce blast radius, that fits in even more tightly, because you want people to be able to go access it, but you also want them to be locked down to what they can do in that specific account. And as soon as you start adding more and more stuff in there, it might be, well, they actually need to be able to access this, but only this in that account. If you had a load of stuff in there, and it's like, oh, well, I've got to give them access to that, and it just becomes trickier and trickier. But it is, keep it simple, use roles and responsibilities and groups, and other than that, probably keep what you can the same, right?
Introduce MFA wherever you've got the option to do it. Turn it on. Because it doesn't really cost you anything, or negligible
it's just extra
amount.
security, right?
But it gives that layer of kind of protection.
Are there any challenges or centralised building blocks that I've missed? I mean, we haven't really probably still talked enough about people, some of the challenges there. We talked a bit about training. Is there anything we've missed there?
I think just engagement. Getting them on board, getting them to understand the why. Because they're the cynics out there will think, it's just a financial thing, or just to push me out of a job because you're going to replace me with something. But just getting them on board and be part of the process.
I think a lot of people feel like their roles get simplified because you can write everything in code, and so some guys from Claranet can come in and start writing some stuff, and we talk about things in a simpler way, as though they're not really a big deal. When on-prem, you've got your AD guy, and all he does is AD, and we've just said we need some domain controllers tomorrow. Can you do it? We don't think that's a big deal. In their world, that's got to go through change. That's and I think it's that level of engagement. It's getting like I don't like the term a cloud center of excellence. But you need all of those people engaged, all with roles and responsibilities within that team, and to all work together and work with when companies like us are brought in to work with us, not against us,
and to learn from it, right?
Yeah,
I think this is one thing that really gets me is people kind of see it as a risk to their jobs. Cloud doesn't replace your job.
No.
It actually makes you more interesting to employers.
Yeah.
If you grab this tool set, if you get your head around this, and I ummed and ahed about whether to bring it up because I thought you might swear when I did. Data and unstructured data. We've all.
It was all going so well.
It was all going so well. Unstructured data is one of the biggest challenges in migration, and people put it off because it's complex. But you've got to tackle it head on, right?
Yes,
you do. The theoretical answer is yes. The practical answer is that's really hard to do.
In practice it is really difficult because these, this years ago, 10, 15 years ago, this became very cheap and people loaded their VMware environments, piled them high full of disks, and their storage was just, we'll use that, and they didn't have any concept of housekeeping, didn't need to. Whereas now when there's a direct cost to it, your CapEx expenditure doesn't work too well in the cloud, so you're paying per month for this storage. You've got to transfer hundreds of terabytes, if not petabytes, into the cloud. That you have to kind of deal with this. It's a problem. There's no doubt. There's no easy answer for it. There's no easy solution.
And
but
it's keeping the same quality of service you've got. So people be able to access the files as quickly as they can when it's on-prem or wherever it might be, but having that kind of control over it, so you're getting version and bits like that. There are real challenges in it, and I don't know. There isn't an answer to everyone.
It's definitely not
specific, isn't it? It's very case specific.
There's some really simple. Well, I say simple, but avenues that you can explore sort of immediately, and they're things like when a lot of customers are moving to Office 365 now.
Using OneDrive.
OneDrive.
Yeah, absolutely.
So you replace people's legacy home folders with OneDrive, and there are some simple things you can start to do immediately. You are still left with a vast amount of data that is unstructured and shared between many, pretty much across the entire business. And that's the piece where it becomes really difficult.
It's fearing cultural change in making changes like the OneDrive. That is such a useful change if people are willing to make it. But they'll be like, well, people have always done it this way. That is...
we've always done
it that way.
Okay.
That is the problem, right? You've got to kind of go, well, you've always done it that way and it doesn't work properly. So, but we're used to it now. Well, that doesn't mean it works. That means you're used to it not working. It's a very different thing.
There's three big areas within unstructured data. The cost of storing it elsewhere, the migration time,
Yeah, well, God, yeah.
and the backups. You know,
Yeah.
you may well want to swallow the cost. You may want to, spend months and months transferring this data into the cloud, but then you've got to back it up in such a way that it's usable and you can manage it.
Yeah.
And those 3 areas for me, there's just kind of
Add on top of that enterprise search.
Yeah.
Well, it's the holy grail.
Search that,
Everyone
yeah.
wants enterprise search, and what is that?
Yeah.
You know,
They want global file locking.
yeah,
Yeah.
local cache. Okay, you can have all this, but it's going to cost
Cost
you
you
this much.
absolutely, yeah.
Whoa, we don't want to spend that much.
Well, it's just our data. Well, but surely it's the backbone of your business. And that's the difficult, getting people to see the value in what it is. Because it is probably the most challenging and costly part of your migration compared to on-prem. Because, like you say,
Yeah.
everyone's got those cheap...
So they'll need to get, and I think people put off the problem so long that when it actually comes to doing it, the problem's probably 2, 3, 4 times the size that it was when they could have
Yeah.
started.
Attack it early and hit it hard, right?
But there are these problems, but there are some good solutions out as well. NetApp are doing their virtualized, cloud-ready,
OneTap, yeah.
cloud-native OneDrive is
Yeah.
a great cloud storage for
Absolutely.
personal data.
Move to G Suite.
Yeah, G
SharePoint
Suite.
Online.
There's
Really
all, I mean,
solution.
we've researched so many technologies on this. I mean, we could write a white paper on it. I don't think we should name them all, but there really are some good ones out there. And it's,
Yeah.
it's something that you need to look at early and do some POCs.
Yeah.
How many POCs have we done? Like 4 or 5?
We did 3.
I've done
didn't
2
we?
and another one as well then. So, yeah, about
There's
5.
no harm in saying to your end users, have a tidy up.
Yeah.
That, even if they're not top 10%, when you're talking petabytes, it's thousands saved, thousands a year.
You're absolutely right.
Being able to do the intelligence hearing in S3 now as well.
That's cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
Well,
Absolutely.
yeah, and pushing everything to Glacier.
Came out of
Yeah.
reInvent. Great
Yeah.
stuff. Cool. I think for me, we've probably given people a load of problems. Hopefully, some ideas on how to solve them. Thank you both very, very much for your time. I really appreciate it. It's great to chat to you and actually go through what it's like on the ground. And thank everyone for joining.